What's up, guys? Today I will be going over all my tips for Tiny Glade, as well as answering some of the most common questions I get asked in the comments. Let's start with the settings and the hotkeys. If we go into our settings, you can see what your personal settings are. You can see the current hotkeys as well as modify them as needed. Someone asked me why my buttons are on the left, and this is where I changed them. I went into settings, I clicked the UI. Using the arrows on the toolbar alignment, you can move the buttons to the top, bottom, left, or right of your screen, depending on your preference. If you don't like having to drag your mouse over each tool, you can also use the keyboard. Double check your settings to make sure you are using the right hotkeys. But if you choose to use the hotkeys, clicking a single key multiple times will cycle through each option within that tool. So for example, my mouse is fixed in the center here. If I click 1 repeatedly, you can see how the tool is switching through all of the options. Sometimes I use the numbers, sometimes I don't, it just depends. But it's nice to know they're there. My favorite hotkeys are probably left control, H, Z, and X. H will hide the UI in the camera mode. The screenshot tool automatically takes a picture without the UI, so this hotkey is going to be most useful for video creators. Holding left control will prevent snapping when performing different actions. For example, let's look at the windows. When holding down control, it will prevent the windows from grouping together and becoming a larger window. If you already have a grouped window, holding down control while hovering over the window will allow you to separate those windows apart. Same goes for the doors. You would click and then drag your window off of the other window, so it will separate them apart. Left control also works with the fences and the walls. Let's use a wall for this example. If you want to draw another wall right up next to this edge here, holding down control will prevent the snap interaction to the edge. Because the game, it will try to help out by, snapping that point together. But if you don't want that, just hold down control and you will be able to freely draw around that point without it snapping together to that point. Z and X are in the same family. Z will undo and X will redo. It's super useful. I'm sure you are already familiar with these two. However, if you didn't know, these two keys are how we go about creating the time-lapse videos. Alrighty, now that we have gone over the keys, let's move on to the tools. Let's start with the first tool, the buildings. We can place either a round or square building. Before placing it down, holding down left click will allow you to adjust the size of the building before placing it down. There are different settings that will appear depending on what your mouse is doing. If you hover, you get a set of quick actions. On the roof, we are able to raise, lower, pucker, and bloat the roof. Hovering a wall will show an arrow appear. We use these to resize the building. If you right-click on the building, you will see a static set of interactions appear. You can raise and lower, widen on the sides here, rotate with this one, as well as raise the base of the floor up with this long line and white dot here. Doing so will create a set of supports for that building. Roofing has a bunch of options as well. We can raise and lower with this one. With this set of arrows here, you can rotate the way the roof faces, And if you pull these arrows out all the way to the edge, the roof will change completely, giving a nice triangle shape to the corner. The look of this shape here will change depending on the paint setting you have selected. Changing between wood and stone in the paint tool will change how the roof, railings, and supports will look. If we grab our roof and we pull it down like this, it will remove the roof and reveal the railing. To see or remove the railings, you can toggle this setting in the paint tool. We're going to get the paint tool, we're going to come over here, we're going to click, and then this setting right here. This will change the top of the building to be either flat or have railings. The railings will be either stone or wood, depending on what you choose. Next on the list is a floating building or a building without supports. I see this asked most often. We make floating buildings by using the circle building block. Let's first place one round building down. Raise it to the height you need it. And then we're going to place another one directly on top of it. Use the snapping guides so that it will snap your second build onto the base of the first one. Now let's take this second building here and we're going to stretch it out so that it is the exact same size of the first building. Do it slow and you're going to see the supports disappear. You can build on top of this. You can build square shapes, round shapes. You cannot put fence up here. Try to think of these here as the base or the foundation, and if you place anything below it, the supports will pop back up. If you wanted supports in a certain place, you could use this. Like if you want the supports to only be on the left side and you want just the supports to pop out here, then you should do this because then you can control where your supports are. Let's move on to the fence tool. The fence tool has quickly become one of the best ways to add little details. There are a lot of interactions. So let's draw a fence. And we're going to raise it to max height. Let's cut this here and I'm going to lower this one to the lowest setting. To cut the fence, I used the scissor tool. Click the wall or fence so that it is highlighted. Hover along the edge of the fence until you see the scissor pop up. Then I'll simply left click to cut it. Alrighty, so we have two fences here. Now let's go grab the path tool. To create an archway, draw a path through the fence, or more importantly, directly under it. The interaction between the fence and the path is an archway. The archway is taller and will have more design options. The archway's max height is the same as a wall or building. To change the archway height, click off of the fence and hover the arch. You will see a white square pop up around the archway. Simply click, hold, and drag around to adjust. When it's the height you want, release it. The arch will rise to max height, but will only shrink down to the size of the fence height here. Meaning, if you want this detail to be as low to the floor as possible, you will have to lower the overall fence height, which is this line right here. So we're going to have to lower that line, and now the arch will drop down as well. Once we have the fence in archway form, there are more interactions based on width. Adjusting the width will change the support beams in the corners. You can only go so wide before another arch will pop up. These will also shrink down to single posts if that's what you're looking for. If you want the multi-layered beam look, where it's like a fence of long posts, I would stretch the fence, draw a path under it, raise it to the height you want first, and then start cutting it apart. It will save you a lot of time having to adjust each one individually. This flat beam up here, this piece of wood, is how we make the wood fountains with the blue planks. If you are having trouble changing the fence color, click the top of the arch instead of the side of the fence. Wood bridges are achieved by using these archways. There are two methods to the wood bridge. You can either organize the beams side by side like this, or you can go long ways like this bridge. Neither is really faster. They both take some time to create. I like the long ways one because it looks a little more organic, but the other one has good uses too. These beams can also be made into stairs, something I forgot to mention in the stairs video. Organize them side by side, increasing the height as you go to create the wood stairs, similar to how you make the stairs with the wall tool. The fence has one more kind of funky interaction. Let's make a 3-point fence. Now we are going to drag this center point to the left, and we are going to take the two endpoints and stack them over here on the right. Now let's drag a path underneath the middle point. Doing so at the right angle will create this half support post, and it has a little top as well. I've seen this used for stairs. I've used it for stairs. I've used it for crosses, for a graveyard. I've used it for extra support detailing on like a gazebo. It has a lot of different uses. It's just another way to utilize the tool. It is finicky, so it works because half of the fence is on the path and not the whole thing. If you put the whole thing on it, it turns into a full arch. So if you want the half feet, you kind of have to finesse around and play with that path tool. Moving on to the wall tool. The wall tool also has an interaction with the path. Putting a path beneath the wall will reveal an archway. This archway is made of stone and is rounded. The top of the wall is also affected by the paint tool rail toggle. Let's take the paint tool and click on the wall. With this button here, it will either flatten or add the railing to the top of the edge with the zigzag here. So if you could see, we're clicking on and off and it's changing the wall. If the railing is active, the wall will always have bricks chunked around the arch. You can raise and lower the height of the wall, and the bricks will shape around the archway even if the overall wall height is lower than the arch. If the terrain beneath it is raised, the wall will stay the same height, shaping around the terrain in a slanted formation. Now, if we toggle the flat top option, we get a different look. If the terrain is raised beneath the wall, the tallest point will dictate the height of the entire wall, maintaining the height across the lowest ground level. When lowering the overall wall height next to an arch, while the flat top setting is active, the bricks will change how they interact with the archway. Instead of surrounding the arch, they will disappear beneath the arch, leaving behind a single file, clean stack of stone bricks. These arches are what I use for a lot of little details. This is how I achieved the throne armrests in my throne inspiration short. This was a question asked in the comments, so I'm going to make one really quickly to show you how it's done. So, I will be using the stone wall, flat top setting on the stone wall, and the path tool. Let's show you how I did it. First, the ground beneath has to be all path. When this wall here is on all path, it's all arches. So if we pull this setting down here, the height line all the way down, the wall disappears completely and all we have is arch left behind. So we're going to cut it up. and now we have a single arch. We're going to take the arch and we're going to line it up next to the throne, adjusting it as needed. I used it here on the armrests. I also used it for the back of the chair. I basically just stacked these arches until it looked right. So you just kind of layer. I think my biggest tip is going to be layering everything, you know, from the buildings to these little details here. Just layer, layer, layer until like it feels kind of full. You know, you want the build to feel complete. As a side note, a long line of these arches here with the path underneath will make for a fun little garden fence or decoration. Let's move on to what the rest of the path can do. Bringing the path to the side of a wall will bring up a door. You can make a door bigger or smaller depending on how much path has interacted with the wall. Too much path will create an archway, but now it hollows out the building. If we keep going, all the walls will become arches. Now, let's remove the roof and lower the overall height of this building. As we go lower and lower, the building will eventually turn into stairs. These stairs, while adorable, are pretty short. That is why most of us use the castle wall tool to build stairs. We layer them like so. Something you may not know about is the pond and the path. Let's draw a pond real quick, and let's place a building down. Using the path on the pond creates little rocks, and if we touch the wall with the path while the wall is underwater, these little grates pop up. Alright, now let's go over to the eraser tool. We are going to be using the eraser tool to crop our buildings. This tool will be the only tool I cover in the eraser tool option because the rest are pretty self-explanatory. This wall tool here is the only one with a more complex interaction. Alright, so as you see here, we have a round building with a roof. To remove the roof and floor from this building, we're going to come over here to the eraser, toggle the castle wall. I like to shrink this bar here down to the lowest setting. Now let's take it over to the side of our building and give it a click. This will take a chunk out of the wall, but it will keep the wall shape intact. And it will turn this building into a wall, which will remove the roof and the floor. I use this all the time. It's super useful for all sorts of little details. Doing this removes the ability for the building to snap to other buildings, so keep that in mind. For something like a fire pit or a well, here is how I would keep it centered, even though it can't snap. We're going to start with our shape. I'm going to do circle. We're going to make a small building in the center for snapping to. This way, we can keep layering and pulling and cutting, all while still staying centered. The only pain about this is you have to drag your walls back together, but that's not really that big of a deal. It's way easier than trying to draw a perfect circle. Another question I have seen is, how do I get the tiny chimney? The tiny chimney appears when using the chimney tool next to a window. Holes in the floor. If you want to build your well or a fire pit in an actual pit, you must first raise the terrain. Next, what we'll do is we'll get the water tool and we'll try building a pond on the raised terrain. At the time of recording this guide, the pond tool only carves water into the lowest point of the terrain. Therefore, you will make a hole when you're trying to put a pond on a mountain. Okay, Okay, let's move on to stained glass windows. I have seen this used and I have tried it a couple of times, but I still haven't found like the right application for it personally. But I'll still show you how to do it and why it works. So we have our building. Now let's grab the little square windows. What we're going to do is make a pattern with these little blocks. Most importantly, we're going to be changing the colors of these blocks. Alright, so we have our design. You could just be done at this stage. Make a window out of the little squares, maybe put an arch around it and call it a day. But for the sake of this demo, we are going to do it another way. We're going to grab the wall tool and place a fancy window on it. When a fancy window is on a wall, it becomes a glass window pane. No light will shine through this window. That is why this works. The light from the little colored squares are going to shine through this window. So we're going to bring over the wall and line it up, and we're going to move the window so that it is placed in front of the stained glass. It is super cute, but here's why I don't like it. You can only see the stained glass at night. All the effort to make it, really spectacular, and the design is only visible at night. I really like the idea of the stained glass, and I will continue trying to incorporate it into my builds because I do think it's a neat interaction. I just have yet to find a good place to use it. I did have a small attempt with the Adventurers Guild build, but I had done it on a round building, and so I had issues with lining them up. I had issues with the end result, like trying to take a photo of it on a round building. There was only certain angles where you'd see the color, so I didn't anticipate that. So that didn't really turn out how I expected. I did see a really good use of this on Reddit. Someone had made a vampire castle, and they designed giant stained glass windows with the little squares. I think they used a combination of the single square and the double square, and they made a really great design. They didn't put the fancy window in front of it, they just let the squares take center stage, and it really worked because a vampire castle kind of belongs in the night, and so the photo was taken at night, and so the glass was able to shine, and it really worked for this build. But anyways, yeah, I think it would be really great if we could make the windows have that color during the day. I think it would motivate me more to use this idea. But anyways, that's my 2 cents on that. I think it's really great. That's how you do it. And let's move on. Let's move on to stone clutter. All of the glades have different themes. We have summer, autumn, olden, flowery, my personal favorite, and winter. Olden is the only map that has terrain clutter, but you can still have the terrain clutter on any build. Let's load up a flowery map for the example. As you can see, no rocks or wood logs have spawned. Let's remove some trees so you can see these little rocks pop up. We're going to press escape, go into load, and you're going to click the little leaf at the bottom of your glade and select Olden. And as you can see, a bunch of rocks and logs started popping up. If you want the dead trees, you'll have to spawn those in because you didn't start on Olden, therefore Olden trees didn't spawn. With the new update, clutter has to be clicked on, right, to lock it in. So we're going to click on some clutter, lock it in, and then when we change back to flowery, as you can see, the rocks I interacted with stayed on the glade. So that's how you do that. At any point in time, you can change your glade, which is kind of nice. Sometimes you get halfway through a build and you think, I really want it to snow, and that's how you would do it. Let's take a quick look at the camera tool. I have 2 questions I'll cover. 1, how do I do the time lapse? And 2, how do I get the color vibrancy in my videos? So I'd like to explain those here. When we're in the camera tool, you can do a few things, but let's just focus on the colors. While we're in the camera tool, we're going to come down here to this button, the little 4 squares and the houses. This button will allow us to change the color filters. So you can look through it, pick one you like, and then we're going to select one. And now we're going to come up to the button above it, And this option lets you change the saturation, the contrast, and the brightness. I almost always juice up the saturation. Another good way to get good coloring is by changing the time of day. Sunset and sunrise portion of the day sometimes offer a unique color grading in tandem with a filter change. It just depends on what filter you're on and all that good stuff. As for the time lapse, I will come into the camera tool, set all this up, get my colors. Then I will get a good angle of the build. I will press H to remove the UI, and then to get the time lapse, you press Z, which will undo your entire build. Tiny Glade will save your whole build, so you can Z all the way back to the beginning of the build when there was nothing, and then you will record the redo. So I Z to undo, and then I X to redo, and you hold that X until your video is complete, your build is done. Do not change anything in between there. Don't go in there and edit your build because it will overwrite what you already created. So don't change anything. So just Z to the beginning, X to the end. You can go back and forth between Z and X. Like if you want to zoom in and get a redo on a certain section, you can undo and then redo. Undo, redo, undo, redo, and it does not change anything in your build. It's just going back and forth like a rewind and a fast forward. But do not edit anything, please. I don't want you to lose your build. We're going to end it out with the decorations. This section is going to be mostly for new players, or if you are unfamiliar with some of these interactions, stick around. First, let's start with the window tools. All windows can interact in multiple ways. A window can be placed on the floor and it makes a door, and a window placed on another window creates a bigger window. The only one that doesn't work for the door is the tiny little square. I think it should though, a tiny little like mouse door would be so cute. The bigger windows placed on a floor make larger doors. If the window is placed on the floor, like down here, it becomes a trapdoor. Clicking on a door will toggle through door decorations. You will have a bell, a wreath, or none. Clicking on a regular window will change window details. This does not work on fancy windows or the tiny windows. The regular windows with the hatching, you can have flower pots, shutters, fabric dangling. Fabric dangling on a window within proximity of another window with fabric will create a clothesline between the two windows. I made a quick little build here to show you all the windows and everything kind of like decorated on this. Clutter will spawn near the base of the buildings when a door or window is placed within the right proximity. Now that we can move the clutter, I find myself making a little clutter spawn zone almost every build now. I will spawn all my clutter in and keep all them in the corner for my build, making it easier to find the exact piece I'm searching for. If you are having trouble getting a certain clutter piece to spawn, like for example, like a stack of wood, if you want to make a fireplace and you're trying to get that wood to spawn and you can't, I would change how you're spawning in the clutter. Like maybe try a trap door on a full floor, or a door near the terrain, like the base of like the floor, you know, like around the grass. Maybe put a little path down so it has space. But if you can't get something to spawn, just change how it's spawning. That usually works for me. It is much easier than sitting there in the same spot trying to get something to spawn, because maybe just the space around it doesn't allow for it to pop up. So just change your space around to get that clutter you're looking for. Alright, let's look at the banners. Clicking on a banner will toggle through all the design choices. Depending on where you place the banner determines on which flag design you get. They can be placed everywhere, from the floors, the terrain, the walls, and the roofs. When two banners are in proximity of one another, a line of flags will appear between them. Using the paint tool, we can change the colors of these banners. While the flags are connected, changing the color of the flag on the left side, for example, creates a multicolored set of flags between the two banners. The lighting has also been updated with our clutter patch to include a brightness setting. So we have dim, low, and bright light now. And here's an example of those in the dark so you could see them side by side. Alright, I think I covered everything. If you have any more questions, please ask them below in the comments. Otherwise, thanks for sticking around and watching the video. Take care. Thanks for watching.